E POU IERIKI oi, tokina maia e ka kikurum, o POU IERIKI e kai e kero. E POU IERIKI oi, tokina maia e ka kikurum, o POU IERIKI e kai e kero. E POU IERIKI oi, tokina maia e ka kikurum, o POU IERIKI e kai e kero. E POU IERIKI oi, tokina maia e ka kikurum, o POU IERIKI e kai e kero. E POU
Okorong tering. He re mei ta imi, he re mei te motu. He re mei ka rangata matua, ka chakat, ka shimarik, ka mokupu. He re mei ko IERIKI. Ko tēnei ti, ko POU IERIKI. Ko himaira i kā karakī o kā karāpuna moriori o re kohu. Ka rahi te mihi ki koutou katoa, no tata, no te whietu, no te ao nui, te ao roa, te ao marama, hoko menetai, me rongo. Ko Kiwa Hammond ta ingo o tēnei ti taket. My name is Kiwa Hammond, and I have the honor and privilege of being your presenter for the series, POU IERIKI. This webinar series has been created to introduce, explain, and demonstrate everyday use of some karakī moriori for those who are learning tā re Moriori language, and are interested in tikane Moriori culture. These karakī have been sourced from the writings of the record keepers of Moriori traditions, and are now being brought to life verbally through recitation and discussion to further our understanding of our karapuna Moriori, and to consider how we can properly apply them in the present and in the future. We would like to thank the Mātāwai for its investment in the regeneration of tā re Moriori, as well as its ongoing support for Moriori language aspirations. The name of the series, POU IERIKI, is derived from an ancient canoe hauling chant. You would have heard it being recited as the opening soundtrack for this webinar. In an earlier series of webinars produced in 2021-2022, POU IERIKI was explained and taught to participants. Here, POU represents a pillar, and IERIKI symbolizes leadership because it takes great strength to take a stand and lead in the face of adversity, and to do so with peace in your heart. Ko himaira I POU IERIKI. In this session, we are focusing on a karakī called Kā Tai a Kahu, the tides of Kahu. Please watch the following video and listen to this karakī being recited and explanations that follow, along with some practical uses of phrases contained within this karakī.
Ko tai miti, ko tai whanua, miti tai ki Aotea, whanau tai ki Hhiawaiki. Paunga, he miti Kā Tai Aotea paunga, e miti Kā Tai aropaua paunga, e miti paunga, e horo hokorongo ki tai nei. Ka kita tai o pehanga riki, ka pāta tai o tau waihoro. Ko tai miti ki a kahu, o I, ko tai rere ki Hhiawaiki. Kā Tai a Kahu, the tides of Kahu. In this karakī, Kahu, an explorer from the Pacific Ocean, who came here generations upon generations ago, and attempted to plant and propagate the kumara. But unfortunately, the conditions weren't right for it. And so, after a time, Kahu decided to return to Hhiawaiki. Hhiawaiki is a Moriori name for Hhiawaiki, though both names are used and interchanged. And so, Kā Tai a Kahu was actually Kahu's farewell to this land, as Kahu and his people travel back to Hhiawaiki. So as such, it is a karakī that is appropriate when you are departing. The difference being, though, that when Kahu departed from here, he didn't return. But sure enough, as was the case with Polynesian explorers, they took knowledge throughout the Pacific with them, and that knowledge was passed between islands and between peoples. So no doubt that Kahu's experiences would have been passed on to those who came later, and also left for those who remained. So Kā Tai a Kahu, we can use it as a way of saying farewell, but not permanently, because we do want to return, and we do want to return as much as we can to Rekohu.
In front of you, you'll see the words for Kā Tai a Kahu. We'll go through these very soon and give everybody an opportunity to feel it and to experience it and to talk it, and in time, learn it. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into some of the meanings behind the words. Now, do remember that there will be a question and answer session later, so please feel free to post any questions and comments in the chat function. Now, this karakī, which the explorer and navigator Kahu is said to have recited upon his return to Hhiawaiki, it can be easily learned and performed to a beat and rhythm, just as you heard on the video that you've just watched. Now, as I said in that video, it may be used as a farewell from a location, or to end an event, either as a karakī or even as a rongo to support other karakī. So, who was Kahu? There is a tradition among Moriori called Kōro Waka a Kahu, which refers to the journey of Kahu, an early ancestor, as we know, who travelled to Rekohu long before many others. Kahu and his crew brought with them various crops from Hhiawaiki to plant, grow, and harvest, as was the practice with many of the Polynesian explorers and navigators. In this instance, this included eruhe, which was a type of fern root, which took hold on Rekohu, and kumara, also known as pakamara, which, as you heard in the video, didn't quite manage to find its place in terms of growing on Rekohu. After several attempts, and at a place named after him called Kahu, Kahu became despondent that the kumara crop would not grow as the conditions were not suitable because the land was what was called whenua rei, or wet land. And those of you who are experienced in growing kumara, you will know what are the optimum conditions to be able to do so. It is said that as Kahu and his crew were departing this wet land, that he recited this karakī, Kā Tai a Kahu, the tides of Kahu, to express his intention to return to the homeland, Hhiawaiki, or Hhiawaiki, the other name that is used when talking about the ancient homeland. In this karakī, you would have heard the word paunga. Paunga is the voice of Pangaro. It is the heartbeat of the ocean. As the waves reach the shore, it is rhythmic in its constancy and provides a connection between the sea and the human self. And even if you look at the translation next to Kā Tai a Kahu, you'll see that the word paunga hasn't been translated. And I think this was deliberate because paunga is a sound and a feeling, and probably quite difficult to translate as one word. There are several places named in this karakī: Aute, Aropawa, IERIKI, Hhiawaiki, and finally Hhiawaiki, or Hhiawaiki. In the story of Kahu, there are many other places that are named. But in regards to this particular karakī, these places named mark significant landmarks and locations where Kahu traveled, landed, departed, or returned to during his travels. Hhiawaiki, or Hhiawaiki, is not a single location. It's not a single location that can be identified as it moved with the people who migrated throughout the Pacific over many generations. Trust me, many people have tried to identify exactly where is Hhiawaiki or Hhiawaiki. But what we know is that the ancestors of Moriori and other people throughout the Pacific, they brought their Hhiawaiki, their Hhiawaiki with them, and then they left it behind. But let's have a look at this word paunga and consider more about Yetu Tangaro. On your screen, you'll see an image up the top. Those of you who have been fortunate enough to go to the kopi groves, in particular Rotorua, you may be familiar with this particular pokoairo, with this rako momori. Some of us refer to it as tangaro. Tangaro, to others, tangaroa. And you just have to look at the shape, because it is quite different to other rako momori in terms of its shape and how it presents itself. Very Eastern Polynesian in its appearance. And so I remember the first time I became really conscious of this pokoairo, the first thing that came to me was tangaro. Now, some of our hūnau on the island also affectionately refer to this particular rako as island guy or Polynesian guy. Either way, we're still talking about the same place of origin. In the image below, you'll see crashing waves. Now, those of you who have been to a very special place called Hinga, you will recognize this place. Or if you're anywhere at a time when the ocean is crashing, that is paunga. Paunga. I'd like you to take a moment just to actually say the word paunga. And when you're doing so, even if it means closing your eyes, thinking about the ocean, because when a wave crashes, it makes there's like a reverberation. There's almost like a hollow sound, especially when it's a big wave. It doesn't just go splash. There's a boom. There's a beat. There's a heartbeat. So boom symbolizes, or perhaps it is, the heartbeat of the ocean and the heartbeat of Tangaroa. So I'd just like you to hold that in your minds and in your hearts and in your puku as well. Boom. Kumara or Pakamara, as our ancestors, our Moriori ancestors would have said. Here's a short karakī. This is a karakī that Kahu is also said to have recited in relation to the kumara. I'm just going to talk it through. Kumara no aro paua I ko. Kumara nā rau toro tinaku e. O mai e iahu mai o wahine ti. E kaha takina nā rau toro tinaku e. There is a translation below, and just so you know, that is not my translation. Some of you might take note on the third line where it refers to your junior wives. Definitely not the language of this century, and probably the language of, the one before the last. What we do know about Kahu is that his story, his journey was retained, because it's most likely, obviously, that some of his crew stayed on Rēkohu while he returned. And as I said in the video, upon his return or his travels to other places, the knowledge that he had gained, even though you could say that the kumara, the planting of kumara on Rēkohu was a failure, it's still a lesson. So the knowledge spread throughout the Pacific and to others. And you can even surmise that maybe that's why not many waka actually came to Rēkohu. Perhaps they knew in advance, oh, that's not the place to go plant kumara. I think we'll go find somewhere a little bit warmer. And speaking of a little bit warmer, the images you see, no, those are not kumara, but kamara. They have been grown on Rēkohu. Those have actually been grown in the Tairāwhiti, in Te Wairua in particular. And our huno, this was our most recent, actually our first real harvest of kumara. My daughter, Rahiri Makwini, who's one of the support crew for this webinar, transformed my beautiful, flat, nicely mowed backyard into a very productive mara. And they included kumara. Now, one of the things we do know about the variety of kumara that Kahu brought to Rēkohu and tried to plant is that it would have been very different to the kumara that we eat now. Same with the eruhe, the fern root. So the fern root that is currently on Rēkohu is not indigenous. That fern root is actually introduced. It's said that the eruhe was it wasn't as fibrous, it wasn't as coarse, and it was lighter in color and probably easier to eat. Unfortunately, upon the introduction of pigs to the island, it said that the pigs got in there and they smashed it. And so what we have is the aruhe, which is the introduced form, which our tipuna Māori are more familiar with. Now, practical application. When will we use Kā Tai Kahu? As said in the video, it can be used as a farewell. If we think of Kahu and the situation that he was facing, perhaps a bit despondent that his plans, his hopes, his aspirations for growing and harvesting certain types of crops on Rēkohu didn't come to fruition. And so he recited that karakī. But he recited it probably knowing that he wasn't going to return to Rekohu. Now, as said in the video, there's nothing to stop us from using Kā Tai a Kahu, because why else would our karapuna have preserved it and kept it? There you see in front of you on the screen, Ka Pou o Rangi Tokona, the pillar that stands at Kopinga Marae in our whare, Hoko Menetai. And we have a process, Hoko Maurahiri, where we come in, we gather around the pillar, and we say what is in our hearts. And then for many of us, for those of us who aren't fortunate enough to live on the island, when we leave, we'll gather around the pillar, Ka Pou o Rangi Tokona, and we will once again say what's in our heart. This is actually a perfect opportunity to recite Kā Tai a Kahu, either personally or actually even as a group, because it expresses all those things, returning to our other Hhiawaiki. But like I said, not permanently. So let's have a look again at the video. Let's listen again to this karakī. And in doing so, we'll identify some keywords that actually, they're not in the karakī, but they support what the karakī is talking about.
Ko tai miti, ko tai whanua, miti tai ki Aotea, whanau tai ki Hhiawaiki, paunga, e miti Kā Tai Aotea paunga, e miti Kā Tai Aropaua paunga, e miti paunga, e horo hokorongo ki tai nei. Ka kita tai o pehanga riki, ka pāta tai o tau waihoro. Ko tai miti ki a kahu, o ko tai rere ki Hhiawaiki.
So just before we go back and have another look at the tukupu, the words for Kā Tai a Kahu, here's a few other things. Te aka a kahu. The aka kahu refers to the eruhe. And the word kāka relates to what it looked like, what kind of eruhe it was, as was described earlier. It said also that Kahu brought with him his etu. And the name of the etu was Kiko Kiko. Now, just briefly, the word etu, just like the word atua in te reo Māori, does not mean God. It does not mean God. God is actually, it's a label that's been placed on our belief systems. A label from another language, from another worldview. Etu, I always think of them as the elements around us. Be that the sea, as in the image behind me, that is tangaro. Be that in terms of other etu, rangi nui, pāpā tuanu, rongo, tu, and so many more. Etu. If you're not familiar with it, say etu. Not like achu when you're sneezing. Okay, etu. Etu. There you also see the word pākamara or kumara. Now, if you're wondering what that funny little smile is above the second vowel, it's actually a symbol that's sometimes used to denote that it's a very short vowel sound. Now, often where there is a macron, we know that that's a long vowel sound, but the little smile is put there as a way of showing it's quite a short vowel sound. Pākamara. Have a go. Pākamara. pa, kamara. You might feel something sort of happening at the back of your throat when you're doing that, with like a half swallow kind of. It's not a feature that is completely unique to Moriori. It is found in other languages, but this is a Moriori expression of that. Tāne is said to be the name or one of the names of Te Waka a Kahu, the vessel upon which Kahu arrived. I talked earlier about his crew, and it said that there were pokoru. Pokoru as a word for 40. Pokoru ka chakat. Pokoru ka chakat. I rung Te Waka a Kahu. There were 40 crew members on the vessel of Kahu. And there's another term here, which once again is not stated in the karakī. That word is kauteretere. Kauteretere. And kauteretere is a description of when Kahu arrived here on his waka with his crew. What he perceived was that the islands, Rekohu and the islands surrounding, were afloat and seemed to be not properly connected in some ways. So it's talking about Kamutu, the islands, and the appearance that they seem to be kauteretere. E kauteretere kamutu o Rekohu. And it said that Kahu, through his efforts, he connected, and sometimes he separated out pieces of land. Now, you can interpret that how you like. Some might say that actually is a metaphor. It symbolizes his travels, of how he went from one place to another and connected them, and how he journeyed to other places and he seemed to separate them and divide them. I leave it to you to have a think about it. So, here's our karakī. So what we're going to do, just like you to follow along with me, we're going to go through this a few times, just so you can get a feel. But like I said, like I said in the webinar series already, these videos will be available for you once we get them all sort of properly edited and presented and so on. And they'll be available for you to watch online at your leisure, and to be able to take some time to go through the information that's on these webinars, as well as to learn each of the karakī. So let's go through this one. Kā Tai miti, Kā Tai whānau, miti tai ki Aotea, whānau tai ki Hhiawaiki, paunga. E miti Kā Tai o Aotea, paunga. E miti Kā Tai o Aropaua, paunga. E miti paunga. E horo whakarongo ki tai nei. Ka ki te tai o pehenga riki, ka pā te tai ki tau waihoro. Kā Tai miti kia Kahu, oi, Kā Tai rere ki Hhiawaiki. In the video, you'll probably hear that I use some slightly different words. Instead of whakarongo, I use hokorongo. They're both interchangeable. Whakarongo and hokorongo, both terms that were used by our karapuna, and both mean the same thing. But as you know from the series, hokorong taring, sometimes the hokorong comes out instead of the whakarongo. Another feature of karakī, Moriori, Māori, and others, is oi. Oi. You'll see that's in the last line. Oi, Kā Tai rere ki Hhiawaiki. Oi is a vibration. Oi is a spiritual expression. Oi is ancient. It connects us to the past. It connects us to the etu, to the elements, the sky, the earth, forests, everything around us. So when you hear Oi, that's its purpose. Its purpose is to awaken and stimulate those vibrations and those connections. So let's go through this again. All together. Ko tai miti, ko tai whanu, miti taiki Aotea, whanu taiki Hhiawaiki, paunga. E miti ka tai o Aotea paunga. E miti ka tai o Aropaua paunga. E miti paunga. E horo whakarungo ki tai nei. Ka ki te tai o pehanga riki, ka pā te tai i tau waihoro. Ko tai miti kia kahu, oi, o tai rere ki Hhiawaiki. Some of these places that are mentioned, in particular, Aotea and Aropaua, they feature quite prominently in the number of karakī. In particular, karakī that relating to traveling, to making journeys, to the wind and to the sea. And what it tells us is that these were places of significance to our karapuna moriori. Some say that Aotea is a name for Aotearoa, such as Te Ika Mao, the North Islands of Aotearoa, New Zealand. And some say that Aropaua refers to Te Waka Mao, the South Island. So those are just some interpretations. But what we do know is that our karapuna were felt it was very important to ensure that those names were preserved. Now, the same thing with with these karakī, not just in terms of Kahu's journey, but in terms of the kumara. Because while the kumara did not take hold on Reko, they still preserved the memory of the actions that Kahu took. Probably as a way of reminding themselves of what worked and what didn't work. Because it's all learning. So let's go through this one more time. Ko tai miti, ko tai whanu, miti taiki Aotea, whanu taiki Hhiawaiki, paunga. E miti ka tai o Aotea paunga. E miti ka tai o Aropaua paunga. E miti paunga. E horo whakarungo ki tai nei. Ka ki te tai o pehanga riki, ka pā te tai i tau waihoro. Ko tai miti kia kahu, oi, o tai rere ki Hhiawaiki. I would love for there to be a day sometime very soon where a great big group of us, taimi moriori, could recite this together. At an occasion, be that at Hopinga or be that somewhere else, it would be a wonderful thing for us to be able to do this. So really encourage you to take some time to learn it. And then when we come together for whatever things are going on, that we go through it together. Because the more that we do it, the more confidence we build in ourselves. And one of the things that you would notice too, just in terms of how I do it, is very slow, very deliberate. Because when I'm doing this karakī, I don't want to rush through it. It's not a horse race. I think a lot of our karakī moriori, they weren't a horse race. They were very deliberate. And I think this is a really good example. And why is it like this? Once again, think of those waves crashing on the shore. There's a rhythm, there's a beat. There's a cadence. And so when I'm reciting Kā Tai Kahu, I'm always thinking of the ocean. I'm thinking of those waves crashing. Pauna. E miti Kā Tai au te pauna. E miti Kā Tai aro paua pauna. E miti pauna. And I think if you take that, you put that term into your heart, pauna, it is a heartbeat. It's the heartbeat of the ocean, the heartbeat of Tangoro. It is also the heartbeat of our people. Now is a fantastic opportunity, Tahuna. If you have any questions, I see in the chat there's quite a bit going on. And I'll just go, sorry, I'm just putting it on the screen in front of me. I think I just had to zip it across the screen in front of you guys. Okay. And just having a look through some of our chat. And I see there's some comments here from some of our hunu. Okay.
There's a new comment down the bottom.
Right down the bottom. Oh, it had to be Ricky Huppy. So Ricky's asked a question. What is the name of the short vowel symbol in Tare Moriori? Yes, there is a linguistic term, and right now, Ricky, it escapes me. But if you go online, you actually see, actually go into the symbols folder or do a cut and paste out of a document where that is showing, put it into Google, and it will show you some examples of how it's used in other language. I actually, right now, I'm having a blank moment, and so I'm not remembering the actual name of it, but I like to call it smiley vowel. Okay, smiley vowel, because it's a little smile above a vowel. There it is. Rahi Marquini was onto it. It's called a breathe. All right, so now we can breathe easy. Different kind of breathe. Okay, any other questions? Okay, fantastic. A great comment there from our CEO, Levi Lenors. Kā Tai Kahu. Challenge for Huno to learn before the end of this year's AGM. Huno karakī to end. Oh, awesome. Well, let's make that a goal. Actually, let's not make it a goal. Let's make it a reality, shall we? So those of you who are going to come on over to wherever the next AGM is going to be, I'm not too sure if it's going to be where, but that is a fantastic thing for us to be able to do. And I think Levi is probably going to put something in there. And I see that Deb has also just said to Levi, how about we recited our staff week? Fantastic. Actually, I really do want to acknowledge the team there at Kopinga, at Hokotehi Moriori Trust, and for all of the mahi, fantastic work that's going into bringing our karakī and our rongo and so much more alive. And it's taken years of work and dedication by a whole lot of people. But it's really heartening to see, especially in more recent times, more and more of our people really taking control and having a go. And I think that's the really important thing. Have a go. Okay. If there aren't any more questions or comments, okay. And I think we might actually finish on time tonight. Who knows? I say finish on time. We could go for hours. Hey, before we do finish up, once again, e mihi ki koutou, ki tātou. Once again, a huge thank you to Hokotehi Moriori Trust and Kopinga Marae for all that you do to support Taimi Moriori and all those who support Taimi Moriori. Thank you once again to Te Mātāwai, which has provided the language revitalization funding for this webinar series and for some other resources to be produced as part of this, what we call Kokorong Te Ring. Thank you once again to Te Paipai Pūtaiao, Te Paere Wānanga o Tāko, who helped us with filming and capturing images and quite a few other things. And of course, our tech team that's in the back there, Zach and Rahiri Makuni, who are doing their thing and trying to provide you with as much information and support as possible so that we can make this webinar series for you as easy as possible for you. Okay, so like what we've done for the past couple of nights, we're going to do this karakī. And this is basically just to finish things off. And but before we do, just a reminder that the next webinar will be on Tuesday, the 23rd of April. So not next week, Tuesday, the 23rd of April, which is in a couple of weeks' time. And then in that webinar, we'll be looking at a karakī called tirakoko and how that relates to our chimariki and our mokopu, our children and our grandchildren, descendants in particular. So let's finish off with this karakī here. Tau mu wai rung, tau mu wai raro, tau mu wai roto, tau mu wai waho. Haurongo, haurongo, hoko mene tai. Merong. Ko piriango. Have a great evening.
E POU IERIKI oi, tokina mai e ka kikurum, o POU IERIKI e kai e kero. E POU IERIKI oi, tokina mai e ka kikurum, o POU IERIKI e kai e kero.